Hello boys and girls, it's Mrs. Mahoney here again. I just want to let you know that before I get started with my lesson that I'm so proud of all of the hard work you've done. I want you to keep up the good work. I know your teachers are really happy to see everything that you've turned in. I also want to remind you that if you need any extra help that Miss Milton and I are here for you. But without further ado, let's get started with our lesson plan for the day. So I will be reading you Dooby Dooby Moo by Doreen Cronin and Betsy Lewin. So if you look on the front cover here, we have a picture of 3 cows, which appear to be on a stage singing a song. So do you think cows can sing in real life? No. So cows singing in real life, this is an example of fantasy. So something that is not real, but it does make for a good story. We are going to read through this story and think of some things that are real, that show realism, so real things that can happen, and fantasy, so some things like the cows singing right here that would not happen in real life. So let's think of some things that cows can do in real life. They can lay around, they might eat grass, they make mooing sounds, so those are all examples of realism. All right, so I want you to think of an animal. You can think of any animal that you want, and I wanted you to think of some things that the animal does in real life, and then I want you to think of something funny and silly that the animal could maybe not do in real life, but would make for a good story. So this would be a good time. You can pause the camera, pause the video if you'd like, and think of your examples. All right, so an example that I thought about was with my cats. I have 2 cats at home, and my cats like to lay around. They like to groom themselves, eat food, and sit in my lap, basically. So those are examples of real things that my cats do, and we would call that realism. So some things that my cats wouldn't do in real life, you could imagine my cats maybe baking cookies. So you could see them in the kitchen whipping up some cookie dough, making a huge mess. It might be really funny, and I would really enjoy having some cookies made by my cats, but this is not something that could happen in real life. So this would be an example of fantasy. So if we look at the word realism, so we have realism here. Realism is to accurately represent a person, thing, or situation. And as you see here, I've underlined realism, real in realism. So that's a good way for you to remember the difference between realism and fantasy. Realism has the word real in it, and that means something that could happen in real life. Then if we look at the word fantasy. So fantasy is stories that are not true and could never be true. So sometimes the way I like to think of fantasy too is that fantasy starts with an F, and I think of the word fake starts with an F, so a story that is fake or not true or could never be true. So that's the difference between realism and fantasy. We are going to explore that a little bit further today in the reading. We're going to read a bunch of different scenarios that these animals go through throughout the book, and we're going to stop and think about whether or not they are real examples of realism or fantasy, so things that these animals could not do in real life. And then at the end, I'm going to have you do some independent practice and sort out some events on a piece of paper, and you can decide whether or not an event goes into a category of realism or fantasy. But before we get started, I do want to go over some of our vocabulary for you so you know what to expect as we read. You're going to hear the word interpretive dance. So if you've never heard this before, it's a dance to express emotions or tell a story. So interpretive dance, in this book we'll read the pigs do an interpretive dance for the talent show. So the pigs are just doing a fancy dance where they're expressing their emotions. You will hear the word rehearse. And rehearse is to practice for a later public performance. So when we see the word rehearse, these animals are going to be rehearsing their different talents for the talent show. So we'll see them practicing before they go on stage in front of the public. And then we'll see the word impress. And this is to make a strong impact on somebody. So when the animals go on stage, the judges are impressed by their talents. So that means that they made a good impact on the judges. The last vocabulary words I have for you today are standing ovation. So that's when an audience stands to give applause and appreciation. So this shows you've done an awesome job at your performance when you get a standing ovation and everybody in the crowd stands up for you. So part of the story, you'll see one of the animals does an excellent job and gets a standing ovation. So we'll have to look out for that. But all right, we'll get started reading Dooby Dooby Moo. All right. Dooby Dooby Moo. Farmer Brown keeps a very close eye on his animals. Every night he listens outside the barn door. Dooby Dooby Moo, the cows snore. Fa la 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 ba, the sheep snore. Wacka wacka quack, the duck snores. Duck keeps a very close eye on Farmer Brown. Every morning Duck borrows his newspaper. One day an ad catches his eye. Talent show open to all. Where? County fair. When? Saturday. First prize a trampoline. Second prize box of chalk. Third prize veggie chop-o-matic. All right, we're gonna stop here. So we see the duck reading the newspaper and we read about the duck reading about the talent show. Do you think this is an example of something of realism or fantasy? Remember that realism means something that is real, so the animal could do in real life, and fantasy is something that would be fake or something that could never happen. The answer is fantasy. You'd never see a duck reading a newspaper, so that's a good example. And we could use the picture too to help us. All right, let's keep reading. As soon as Farmer Brown opens his paper, he knew the animals were up to something. Farmer Brown watched them closely all day. He watched them from above, he watched them from below, he even watched them upside down. Outside the barn late at night, he heard Dooby Dooby Moo, fa la 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 ba, wacka wacka quack. Inside the barn, the cows rehearsed Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Dooby Dooby Moo, Dooby Moo 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 Moo. Needs work, Duck noted. The sheep rehearsed Home on the Range. Ba 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 ba, fa la ba 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 ba. Duck had them try it again with more feeling. The pigs did an interpretive dance. Wacka wacka quack, the duck snored. All right, let's stop and think again. So throughout this, I read one example of realism and one example of fantasy. Can you remember what was an example of realism and what was an example of fantasy? This might be a good time to stop the video and rewind and listen to those last few pages again to find the answer. All right, so the one example I read that was an example of realism was that Farmer Brown watched closely over his animals. So if you know farmers or if you think of a farmer, they definitely watch over their animals every day. So that's something that could definitely happen in real life. So we would think that would be realism. And then an example of fantasy would be these animals that were rehearsing for the talent show. They were singing songs like humans would sing songs. So that couldn't happen in real life. All right, let's keep reading. Day after day, Farmer Brown kept a very close eye on his animals. He watched from the left, he watched from the right, he even watched in disguise. Outside the barn night after night, he heard Dooby Dooby Moo, fa la 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 ba, wacka wacka quack. Inside the barn, night after night, the animals rehearsed. Finally, it was time for the county fair. Duck was pacing back and forth, the pigs were combing their hair, and cows were drinking tea with lemon. All right, we'll stop here again. There's three examples of animals doing different things. So we see duck was pacing back and forth, pigs were combing their hair, and the cows were drinking tea with lemon. Out of those three, which do you think is an example of realism? So the answer is, if you were thinking duck was pacing back and forth, you would be correct. So duck was pacing back and forth. To pace just means to walk, so the ducks were walking back and forth. So that's something we would see in real life, so we would call that an example of realism. Pigs combing their hair and cows drinking tea with lemon isn't something that could happen in real life, so we call that fantasy. All right, let's finish off the story. They are up to something, thought Farmer Brown. Farmer Brown was not going to leave them alone. He loaded all the animals into the back of his truck and drove off to the fair. When he got there, he heard Dooby Dooby Moo, fa la 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 ba, wacka wacka quack. He parked his truck and headed off to the free barbecue. When Farmer Brown was out of sight, the animals ran to the talent show desk and signed in. Cows, sheeps, pigs. The cow sang, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Dooby Dooby Moo, Dooby Moo, 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 moo." Two of the judges were clearly impressed. You can see these two here with the high score. The cat's not very happy. The sheep sang "Home on the Range." Fa la 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 ba, fa la ba 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 ba. Three of the judges were clearly impressed. You can see those three. The cat's still unhappy. It was time for the pigs' interpretive dance, but they were sound asleep. Shloink, oink, 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 oink. All the judges were clearly annoyed. Duck really wanted that trampoline. He jumped on stage and sang "Born to be Wild." Quack, 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 quack. The judges gave him a standing ovation. Remember, that's the best type of applause you can get. When Farmer Brown got back to the truck, he heard Dooby Dooby Moo, fa la 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 ba, wacka wacka quack. The animals were exactly where he had left them. That night, Farmer Brown listened outside the door. Dooby Dooby boing, fa la 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 boing, wacka wacka boing. All right, can you see that picture? So the story ended without telling us what happened, but we can draw a conclusion by looking at the picture. What do you think happened? So you can see here, they're bouncing on a trampoline, so my guess is they won first prize. Is this an example of fantasy or realism? Animals jumping on a trampoline? I would say fantasy. That's not something I would see in real life. It would be fun to see though, but we wouldn't see that in real life. All right, thank you for following along. Now it's your turn to practice sorting out realism and fantasy on your own. Attached to this email is a PDF with a list of different events that you can sort out. You can cut out, sort out, and put into different columns. So one column is realism for events that could happen in real life, and then one column is fantasy, so events that couldn't happen in real life. So you'll need to read through each one and decide which column it goes into. If you don't have a printer, you can make a T-chart by yourself, like I did here. As you can see, I created a column that says realism, a column that says fantasy, and I drew a big T in the middle. So under realism, I wrote the pigs fall asleep while at the fair. So pigs falling asleep at the fair is definitely something that could happen in real life. And then fantasy, the pigs do an interpretive dance. We know pigs can't dance like people, so we'll put that under the fantasy column. And so you would read off the different scenarios and just copy them onto the correct column. All right, so now is the time for you to go and gather your supplies. Again, if you have a printer, then you'll want to print the PDF of the attachment that I gave you. You're going to get some scissors to cut out the PDF, and you're going to get some glue to cut out the different events and glue them into the proper chart area. If you choose paper, just using the paper option instead of a printer, then you're going to need to get a piece of paper, something to write with, and have your computer close by so you can look at it to see the different events to copy them onto your chart. All right. So I look forward to seeing all of the work that you do. Make sure to take a picture and send it to your teacher when you've completed your activity. And when you're done, we'll look over that and let you know how you did. So that's all I have for you today. I really enjoyed reading with you and sharing this time with you. Hopefully we'll be able to all go to the county fair this summer and maybe see some of the animals. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll see any pigs doing an interpretive dance, but I'm sure we'll have some fun otherwise seeing them do other things instead. All right, that's all I have for you, so bye for now.